My name is Stacey Rogers, and I've been holding on to something powerful for almost 2 years now. Something I feel compelled to share with you today. It's a story of life, death, and a revelation that changed everything. On February 3rd, 2023, I was in the midst of what should have been a routine surgery when something unimaginable happened. I died. For 9 minutes and 12 seconds, I was no longer of this world. In those precious moments, I was shown something that has left me forever changed. Jesus revealed to me a truth I had never anticipated, something that answers the question so many of us have asked. Why are the chosen ones struggling financially? It's a question that lingers, especially when we give our hearts fully to our faith. Yet the battles feel unending. For nearly 2 years, I've been in prayer, seeking guidance, asking for the strength to share this message clearly. And now, even as I sit here sharing it with you, my hands tremble, my heart races. The weight of what was revealed to me is still so heavy, yet I know it is time. Jesus made it clear. The time is now. His people need to hear this, especially those who are grappling with financial hardship despite their unwavering faith. Before we dive deeper, I'd love to know where you're tuning in from. It would mean a lot to feel connected, even if we're miles apart. And don't forget, like and comment to share your thoughts. This testimony is a call for open hearts and minds. Let's come together, learn, and support each other as we explore the truths that can transform our lives. Now let's begin this journey together. I was 42 years old when everything changed. At the time, I was working as a pediatric nurse at Minneapolis Children's Hospital. My faith had been a constant companion throughout my life. Raised in a Christian home, I'd learned from an early age to trust God in every circumstance. Yet despite my belief, my commitment to tithing and striving to live a godly life, I found myself drowning in financial hardship. As a single mother of 2, life felt like a relentless struggle. 3 years earlier, my husband had left us. The emotional and financial weight of his departure was crushing. I was left alone with mounting debts and an overwhelming sense of pressure that seemed to follow me everywhere. Then, one night in February, I was struck by what doctors later diagnosed as acute appendicitis. I was at work, pushing through the pain, something that many nurses are guilty of doing. Just ignoring it, thinking it'll pass. But it didn't. By the time I finally admitted I needed help, my appendix had ruptured, causing a severe infection that began to spread through my body. The last memory I have before the anesthesia took over was a simple, desperate prayer. Lord, please watch over my children. Little did I know that prayer would be the gateway to an experience that no words on earth could truly explain. What happened next is something I've been instructed to share, even though it feels impossible to convey fully. But I will try, because I believe it's meant to reach you. This moment was the beginning of something that would change everything for me. When my heart stopped on that operating table, something extraordinary happened. It wasn't like anything I had ever imagined. I felt myself gently detach from my physical body, as though I was being lifted from the surface of a calm pool of water. There was no pain, no fear, only an overwhelming sense of peace. Below me, I could see the medical team working desperately, the monitors blaring their urgent alarms, but none of that touched me. I was wrapped in serenity, untouched by the chaos. Then came the light. But light doesn't even begin to describe it. It was more than light. It was living love, pure and eternal truth. It was more real, more alive than anything I had ever experienced in my physical existence. As I was drawn toward it, I suddenly saw my entire life unfold before me, every moment, every decision, all happening at once in what I can only describe as an eternal present. It was as if time itself had no hold over me. And then I heard it. My name spoken with such profound love that it felt as though it was reshaping every part of my being. Stacy. I turned, though there was no physical turning, no body to move. And there he was. Jesus Christ. Let me make something clear. This was not the Jesus from the pictures I had seen as a child, or the portrayal from Hollywood movies. His presence was both overwhelmingly powerful and intimately gentle. His eyes held a wisdom so vast, so deep, that it seemed to encompass the entire universe. Yet as he looked at me, there was a personal love in his gaze that made me feel completely known, completely accepted. It was as if every part of me, every struggle, every fear, had been seen and embraced in that moment. The moment I looked at Jesus, I saw the scars on his hands, glowing with a light so radiant it seemed to tell the entire story of redemption in one single instant. His voice was gentle, yet filled with power, as he spoke. "My daughter, I have brought you here because, like many of my chosen ones, you have been questioning why you face such persistent financial struggles while others seem to thrive effortlessly. Today, you will understand." As he spoke those words, the space around us shifted. It was as though we were no longer bound by time. I was in a place where time and eternity seemed to collide. It was a realm where spiritual truths became tangible, visible realities, clearer than anything I had ever known. In that moment, Jesus began to reveal profound truths about financial struggles, truths that would forever change my perspective. These weren't just concepts or theories, they were divine insights, given with such love and clarity that I knew they would transform my life. And I believe these revelations are meant for you too. What he showed me that day is a message I carry with me, one I hope will bring you the same hope, understanding, and breakthrough it brought me. "Watch," Jesus said, his voice steady yet filled with a depth of love. He motioned to the space before us, where scenes began to unfold, living, breathing moments that I could see with clarity. "I will show you why my chosen ones often walk through seasons of financial hardship." What he revealed next was so profound that it left me breathless. The depth of his wisdom was overwhelming, yet every piece of the puzzle fell into place, creating a picture that answered the questions that had haunted me for years. And I know they haunt many of you as well. The first scene he showed me was beautiful in its rawness, yet heartbreaking in its reality. I saw countless believers, faithful followers of Christ, kneeling in prayer. Tears streamed down their faces as they poured their hearts out, begging for a breakthrough in their finances. Their bills piled high, their bank accounts nearly empty, and their hearts were burdened with the weight of constant lack. "Watch closely," Jesus said softly. "I'm going to show you what's really happening in the spiritual realm when my chosen ones struggle financially." And in that instant, the veil between the physical and spiritual realms was lifted. I could see both at once, an experience unlike anything I had ever known. Above each struggling believer, I saw what appeared to be a protective shield of light. Jesus continued, "This shield, which may appear to them as financial limitation, is actually my protection. Many of my children pray for prosperity without understanding that premature wealth would destroy their souls." He waved his hand, and suddenly I was transported to a vision of what could have been. Alternative timelines, possible futures that would have unfolded if these faithful believers had received the financial breakthroughs they were praying for. What I saw was devastating. I watched as humble servants of God, once dependent on His provision, were transformed by sudden wealth. They became proud, self-reliant individuals who gradually stopped praying, stopped serving, and eventually walked away from their divine purposes altogether. "Stacy," Jesus said, His tone filled with compassion, "some of my most precious children curse the very thing that is protecting them. They don't understand that I'm shielding them from destruction." He showed me how material wealth, when given too soon, becomes an invisible barrier between people and God. I saw faithful believers, people I knew loved God, receive financial breakthroughs they weren't spiritually mature enough to handle. At first, their prayers grew shorter, their attendance at church became sporadic, and their hearts gradually hardened. They began to trust in their bank accounts instead of in God's provision. "This," Jesus said, "is why I allow many of my chosen ones to experience seasons of financial struggle. It's not punishment, it's protection and preparation." And then He showed me something that left me gasping for breath. The unseen battle, the spiritual warfare, was unfolding in the invisible realm. It was a battle for their hearts, a battle that many believers were unaware of, yet the outcome would determine the strength of their faith in the face of future challenges. It was a lesson in divine timing. What we perceive as hardship is often God's loving hand at work, preparing us for something greater. And sometimes that means walking through seasons of struggle, seasons that refine us, shape us, and make us stronger in our faith. As I stood there, in the presence of Jesus, He revealed something I never expected. Dark entities, demons, specifically targeting God's chosen ones with financial attacks. These spirits knew exactly who carried God's anointing, and they created obstacles, trying with all their might to discourage and defeat them. It was as if they could sense the divine calling on their lives, and their mission was clear: to break their spirits through financial struggles. Jesus looked at me with a deep understanding and said, "The enemy knows who carries my greatest assignments." Financial warfare is often a sign of spiritual significance. I was stunned. I had always viewed financial struggles as a burden, a sign of something going wrong. But Jesus was showing me that these very struggles were often confirmation of our calling. They were not random. They were strategic attacks from the enemy, meant to weaken and derail those with the most powerful purposes. Then, scene after scene, Jesus guided me through what I can only describe as revelations. He showed me how financial hardships strip away false securities, the things we rely on other than God. These struggles, painful as they are, force us into a place of complete dependence on Him. They are a refining process, a way for God to shape and mold us, to prepare us for the greater purposes He has for our lives. In those moments, I understood more deeply than ever before. What feels like defeat is often the preparation for something far greater. As I stood there, overwhelmed by the magnitude of what Jesus was revealing, something clicked within me. I saw how every unpaid bill, every financial crisis, was not a sign of God's absence, but an opportunity for Him to prove His faithfulness. It was as if I had been seeing everything backward. "Remember the Israelites in the wilderness?" Jesus asked gently. "I provided manna daily, not yearly. I didn't do this because I couldn't provide enough for a year. It was because I was teaching them to depend on me daily." In that moment, it all became clear. Many of us, his children, are walking through our own wilderness experiences, learning the same vital lesson: how to trust God each day, not just when things are easy or when we have everything figured out. And then Jesus showed me something so powerful that it brought me to my knees, though I wasn't in my physical body. He revealed how our financial struggles often protect us from things we can't see, how they shield us from toxic relationships, harmful situations, and opportunities that would have led us down paths far away from our divine purpose. "Watch this," he said, and I saw a vision of my own life. I saw business opportunities, investments I'd once been disappointed to miss out on because I didn't have the funds. But then Jesus opened my eyes to see what those opportunities would have led to. Paths that would have taken me away from my true calling, away from the work he had prepared for me. What I had once seen as God withholding his blessings was, in fact, his protection. He was keeping me from distractions, from things that might have derailed my purpose. And in that realization, I felt a deep, unshakable peace. What I thought was a setback was actually a divine safeguard, ensuring I stayed on the path he had set before me. "Daughter," Jesus said, his hand resting gently on my shoulder, "your poverty is temporary, but its purpose is eternal. I am not punishing you. I am preparing you." Those words hit me deep. I had always seen my financial struggles as a burden, a sign of something going wrong. But in that moment, Jesus shifted my entire perspective. Every bill I struggled to pay, every time I had to trust him for provision, was not just a challenge. It was a lesson that would shape me for the divine purpose he had set out for me. Then, he revealed something I had never considered. He showed me how financial hardship is like a refiner's fire, burning away the impurities in our character that would make us unfit for the calling he has on our lives. I could see how times of lack exposed our true motives, brought hidden idols to the surface, and tested our faithfulness. Many pray for prosperity, Jesus explained, but they don't understand that character must precede prosperity. I will not release wealth that would destroy my children's souls. This made so much sense. How could we be trusted with more if we hadn't yet learned to rely on him completely? How could we handle abundance if our hearts weren't purified first? Then Jesus revealed something that truly shocked me. He showed me the spiritual power of contentment in the midst of lack. I saw how, when we can rest in God's provision, when we can be content even in the hardest seasons, our hearts grow stronger, our faith deepens, and we are shaped into the people he needs us to be for the greater purpose ahead. It was in that moment that I realized my struggles weren't the end of the story. They were the beginning of a deeper, more powerful transformation. As I stood there watching in awe, Jesus revealed something truly powerful. He showed me how believers who maintained their joy and trust in God during financial hardship were accumulating a kind of spiritual wealth that far surpassed any earthly riches. Their hearts, though burdened with material lack, were rich in ways that I'd never fully understood. "Watch this carefully," he said, guiding my vision to scenes of believers living in what the world would call poverty. But in truth, they were overflowing with spiritual abundance. These people's prayers were powerful, their faith unwavering, and their impact on others was profound. It was clear that their treasure wasn't in their bank accounts, but in the depth of their relationship with God. "These are my true prosperity pioneers," Jesus explained. "They have learned to be content in all circumstances, and this makes them unstoppable in my kingdom. Then Jesus showed me something that moved me to tears. He revealed the generational aspect of financial struggles, how the lessons learned through hardship were not just for the individual, but for their families, their children, and even generations to come. What we go through isn't just shaping us, it's shaping those who come after us. Our endurance in financial trials becomes a legacy of faith, one that strengthens and empowers the next generation to trust in God's provision no matter what. As I stood there, fully immersed in the revelation Jesus was unfolding before me, I felt as if time itself had suspended. Suddenly I saw entire family lineages stretching back through history, each one carrying its own unique story, its own struggles. "Look closely," Jesus said, his voice filled with authority and compassion. "Many of my chosen ones are selected to be generational cycle breakers." Before me, I watched how patterns of poverty, lack, and financial mismanagement had been passed down from one generation to the next, like a dark inheritance that seemed to bind entire families. It was heartbreaking to see the chains that had held my family and so many others captive. But then I witnessed something beautiful, something I had never expected. God had strategically positioned certain believers to break these cycles. "You are not just struggling for yourself," Jesus explained, his tone gentle but firm. "You are fighting a battle for your children, your grandchildren, and generations to come. Through you, I am establishing new patterns of financial wisdom and spiritual integrity that will bless your descendants." In that moment, the weight of what he was saying sank deep into my spirit. It wasn't just about my own struggles. It was about the legacy I was leaving behind. Every financial battle I fought, every prayer I prayed for provision, was not just for me. It was for the future, for the generations that would follow. Through my faithfulness, God was breaking chains that had been wrapped around my family for generations. Jesus then showed me how my own financial struggles were actually a direct part of this divine plan. I saw the shadows of my grandfather's gambling addiction, the burden of my father's chronic debt, and how, gloriously, my own battles with finances, while holding fast to my faith, were literally rewriting my family's spiritual DNA. My financial hardship was not a punishment. It was a divine reset, a moment in time where God was using me to rewrite the history of my family. "The enemy fights so hard against your financial breakthrough," Jesus revealed. "He knows that once these generational chains are broken, they're broken forever." I felt the weight of these words deeply, understanding now that every trial, every delay, was a part of God's plan to establish a new foundation for my family. Then Jesus showed me something that was both awe-inspiring and humbling: the divine timing behind financial release. I saw how God's timing was not just for me, but for many others. It was like watching a master chess player orchestrating every move, every event, with perfect precision. I realized that many of my prayers for immediate breakthroughs had been premature, like rushing into something before the foundation was ready. "Many of my children pray for immediate breakthrough," Jesus said, not realizing that premature blessing would abort the greater purpose I have for them. He showed me believers who had forced their way into financial success through desperate measures, high-interest loans, compromising their values, and taking risks that were not in line with His will. The results were devastating. What they thought were answers to prayer turned out to be traps that led them further into bondage. "My timing is perfect," Jesus emphasized. "I'm not just considering your immediate needs, I'm considering your ultimate destiny and the destinies of those connected to you." This was a pivotal moment for me. I had always wanted the breakthrough, the success. But what I was being shown was that God's timing wasn't about my immediate comfort. It was about the ultimate purpose He had for my life and the lives of those around me. And then Jesus opened my eyes to something I had never fully understood: how financial struggles often protect us from our own desires. I saw how, in our desperation, we might make choices that would lead us away from our true calling. "Stacy," Jesus said, "some of my children aren't financially blessed yet because they would build their own kingdoms instead of mine. I'm waiting until their hearts are fully surrendered." In that moment, everything clicked into place. I saw my own life, the prayers I had desperately prayed for financial breakthroughs, and how receiving those blessings would have led me away from divine appointments and opportunities for spiritual growth. If I had received the breakthrough when I wanted it, I would have missed the very lessons that were essential for my calling. I realized that God wasn't withholding His blessings to punish me. He was preparing me for something greater. "Your struggles are not punishment," Jesus emphasized. "They are preparation for a level of authority and responsibility that requires spiritual maturity to handle properly." This revelation was life-changing. It wasn't about the money. It wasn't about what I thought I needed. It was about becoming the person God needed me to be, the person who could handle the blessings He had in store without being destroyed by them. Then, something even more profound was revealed. Jesus showed me how the enemy specifically targets believers with significant kingdom assignments with financial attacks. "Watch carefully," He said, revealing scenes in the spiritual realm. I saw demons strategically creating financial obstacles for believers who were on the verge of stepping into powerful ministry opportunities. These weren't random attacks. They were calculated attempts to discourage and derail God's chosen ones. "Here's what my children often miss," Jesus explained. "These attacks are actually confirmation of their calling. The enemy doesn't waste resources fighting those who pose no threat to His kingdom." I was stunned by this insight. The financial struggles I had faced were not a sign of failure. They were a sign of spiritual significance. I had been chosen for a purpose, and the enemy knew it. The attacks weren't about my lack of resources. They were about the power of the assignment I carried. Jesus showed me how financial struggles often serve as a divine filter, revealing who truly loves God for who He is, not just for what He provides. I saw believers like Job who were being tested to prove the authenticity of their faith. "Many claim to love me," Jesus said, "but their love is actually for my provision rather than my presence." Financial struggles reveal the true condition of their hearts. What a revelation this was. I'd always thought that financial breakthroughs would come as a reward for faithfulness, but now I understood that they were a test of my heart. Would I love God for who He is, even when my bank account was empty? Would I trust Him when things didn't look like they were going according to plan? Then Jesus showed me something that tied everything together: the preservation of dependence on God. I saw believers who, after receiving financial breakthroughs, gradually stopped praying, stopped seeking God's guidance, and began trusting in their own wisdom and resources. They no longer relied on Him the way they once had. "This is why I often withhold financial abundance," Jesus explained. "I would rather have my children dependent on me than be destroyed by self-sufficiency." This was one of the most profound lessons I had ever learned. God's desire was not for us to be self-reliant, but to be fully dependent on Him. He knew that if we were given everything we wanted too soon, it would lead to pride, to self-sufficiency, and ultimately to a distancing from him. Then Jesus took me to a place where I could see how each financial battle faced with faith was building spiritual authority. "My chosen ones often focus on what they lack," Jesus said, while failing to see what they're gaining. I watched as believers, struggling in the natural, were accumulating something eternal in the spiritual realm, spiritual authority. Each bill paid through faith, every act of generosity despite lack, and every moment of choosing contentment in hardship was building something that would last forever. This is why I allow many of my chosen ones to experience prolonged seasons of financial testing, Jesus explained. They're not just learning about money, they're learning how to carry spiritual authority without being corrupted by it. The more Jesus revealed, the more I understood the depth of his plan. Every financial struggle was a stepping stone to something greater, something eternal. What I once saw as a setback was actually a divine setup for my spiritual growth and my calling. Every hardship was a lesson in faith, humility, and dependence on God. As the revelations continued, I saw how financial struggles could actually serve as a protective boundary. "Watch what happens when I release financial abundance too soon," Jesus said. He showed me believers who, after receiving financial breakthroughs, immediately moved away from their assigned territories, abandoned their ministry assignments, or became so focused on maintaining their wealth that they missed divine appointments. Sometimes, what looked like financial bondage was actually God's way of keeping his children perfectly positioned for their divine purpose. Financial struggles, though painful, were often a means of keeping believers on the right path, preventing them from straying from what truly mattered. Then Jesus revealed how financial struggles often create a platform for powerful testimony. "Your struggles aren't just about you," he emphasized. "They're about the thousands who will be encouraged and instructed by your testimony of overcoming." It was in that moment that I realized that my struggles weren't just shaping me. They were shaping others. Through every trial, every test, I was becoming a living testimony of God's faithfulness, a testimony that would impact countless lives. Finally, Jesus showed me something that brought everything into perfect focus. He revealed how financial limitation often serves as a spiritual incubator, creating an environment where deep spiritual roots can grow. "Many of my children pray for financial breakthrough," Jesus said, not realizing that their current struggles are actually cultivating the spiritual depth they will need for their future assignments. What I once saw as a burden was actually a gift. God was using my struggles to prepare me for the great purpose he had for my life. He was building in me a foundation that would withstand any storm, any challenge. As I stood there in the presence of Jesus, everything became clear. My financial struggles were not the end of the story. They were the beginning of something much greater. God was using every moment of hardship to prepare me for the divine assignment he had for me and for the generations to come. They are not meant to stay in poverty forever, Jesus reassured me. Their current struggles are intentional, a preparation for a calling that requires a level of spiritual maturity that can only be shaped through the fires of testing. Those words echoed deeply within me. Then, Jesus revealed the ultimate truth about financial hardship. It serves as a crucible for spiritual refinement. 1 Peter 1:6-7 speaks of trials that refine faith, more precious than gold, Jesus explained. Financial struggles are often that refining fire. As he spoke, I was given the vision of believers enduring hardships, yet carrying themselves with grace and unwavering trust. In the spiritual realm, I could see each financial challenge as a refining process, burning away impurities, pride, self-reliance, materialism, and worldly ambition. What remained was a purified, unshakable faith of immeasurable value. Jesus paused, then emphasized, "This refinement isn't punishment. It's preparation for an eternal weight of glory that far surpasses any temporary financial blessing I could give." The depth of his words hit me like a wave. This wasn't just about surviving hardships. It was about being shaped for something far greater. Every struggle was a tool in God's hands, refining me for a purpose far beyond anything I had imagined. As the time drew near for this sacred encounter to end, Jesus placed his hands on my shoulders and looked into my eyes with a love that seemed to reach into my very soul. "Stacy," he said, his voice steady yet filled with infinite understanding. "You must return and share these truths with my people," Jesus said, his voice gentle but firm. "Too many of my children are suffering unnecessarily because they don't understand the purpose behind their financial struggles." His words struck me deeply, and before I knew it, tears began to stream down my spiritual face. "Lord," I whispered, feeling the weight of what he was asking of me, "will I remember everything clearly enough to share it?" Jesus smiled, a smile that radiated both compassion and confidence. "I will help you recall every detail at the precise moment you need it," he reassured me. "Tell my people that their financial struggles aren't punishment. They're protection, preparation, and purification for purposes far greater than they can imagine." With those words, I felt myself being gently drawn back toward my physical body. It was as if the world I had just encountered was slipping away, but Jesus' voice echoed in my mind. "Tell them I have not forgotten them. Tell them that their breakthrough is coming at exactly the right time." As those final words rang in my heart, I woke up in the recovery room. The nurses were shocked, their faces a mixture of disbelief and awe. According to the medical records, I had been clinically dead for 9 minutes and 12 seconds. The doctors called my recovery nothing short of miraculous, with no signs of the brain damage they had feared. But I knew, deep within my soul, that this was more than just a medical miracle. I had been given a divine assignment, one I could never have imagined. I was meant to share these truths, these revelations, about why God's chosen ones often struggle financially. This testimony is not meant to dismiss the real pain of financial hardship. I know it. I've lived it. But it's meant to infuse that pain with divine purpose, to show you that your struggles are not meaningless. If you're struggling financially despite your faithfulness, hear this. God has not forgotten you. He is preparing you. He is protecting you. He is purifying you for a greater purpose than just temporary prosperity. Your breakthrough is coming, though it may not come when you expect, and it may not come on your timetable. It will come at the perfect moment, according to God's plan. And when it arrives, you will look back and see why the waiting was necessary, why every hardship, every delay was part of the process. Until then, find your contentment in Christ. Steward faithfully what you have and trust His timing. Remember, your current struggles are building eternal treasures that thieves cannot steal and rust cannot destroy. These treasures will last far beyond any temporary financial blessing. This testimony is not just my story, it's a message for you. May it bring you the same peace and understanding it has brought me. My financial situation has not magically transformed overnight, but my perspective has been forever changed. I no longer see my struggles as punishment. I see them as preparation for a divine purpose that will unfold in God's perfect timing. And in that I find hope. I find peace. And I find the strength to keep going, knowing that every struggle has meaning and every challenge is a step toward something greater.